Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction. Yes, my talk is called A Human Emergency, and it's based on the summary from my latest book, The Digital World Brain, and that covers the UN agenda for the future that they want for us. And they state that the planet is in an emergency. I would say this is an emergency, but not for the planet, but for humanity. The medicine prescribed to ostensibly heal the planet appears to be producing extremely serious side effects that could cause great harm to humanity if we do not immediately put an end to this. United Nations, our common agenda, includes 12 commitments on how to achieve a new multilateral order with muscles. It is about leaving no citizen of a planet behind and signing a new social contract that sets out our obligations to protect the planet from harmful human actions. It commits us to reach zero emissions of carbon dioxide by the year 2050 or earlier. This means a total restructuring of both the energy and food systems. And like no life on Earth. The transition requires extensive satellite monitoring with smart cities, as well as providing all people and products with a digital identity connected to the internet, so that our individual climate footprints can be measured and corrected in real time through the application of a social credit system. Our benefits must be weighed against the burden our actions have on the well-being of the planet. A global code of conduct will ensure consensus on the core scientific facts established by the UN Scientific Council. While all data on people's attitudes, opinions and life choices will be collected in a global collective intelligence agency called the Futures Lab. In this, behaviors can be analyzed and the risks detected at an early stage with the help of artificial intelligence. The Futures Lab is to be overseen by a forum for future generations and a special envoy who speaks on behalf of future generations. What about current generations, one can ask. In order to quickly implement the plan, a planetary emergency will most likely to be declared. This will trigger the setup of an emergency platform that will follow predetermined protocols and act in unison to solve the crisis. That more or less means martial law. The proposed global control system can be summarized as follows. Executive governance. An upgraded UN that's supported by a scientific council sets laws, goals, guidelines, and enforces them. Anticipatory governance. Anticipatory governance through the collection of world citizens' data to study reaction and compliance, as well to predict future events and thus provide a basis for continued decision-making. And multi-stakeholder governance. Network governance with public-private partnerships to implement decisions at all levels of society. This is technocracy, the science of social engineering, an automated system of decision-making. This new system will, if the originators get their way, be signed by the world leaders as the Pact for the Future at the UN Summit for the Future in 2024 and start to be implemented in 2025, all to create the future they want. The planetary emergency and the extensive restructuring are motivated by the fact that several of the planet's 9 boundaries have or are about to be exceeded, which means that humanity have entered the 6th mass extinction. This theory, established under the leadership of Johan Rockström at the Stockholm Resilience Center, is supported by actors such as Club of Rome and the Potsdam Institute. These constitute the new scientific priesthood that defines the boundaries for our action. Supporters and promoters of this agenda include the very richest, most powerful and influential people in the world. Not least this applies to the global elite who are part of the United Nations close partner organization, World Economic Forum, and the world's approximately 3,000 billionaires who own and control the world economy. This is reflected, for example, in Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors' Global Commons Alliance project. This project is supported by a number of billionaire families and their affiliated foundations and organizations. Here illustrated by André Hoffman from MAVA Foundation, Vice Chairman of Swiss pharmaceutical giant Roche, member of the Club of Rome and a WEF trustee. At the center of these efforts are the Trilateral Commission, the American think tank Council on Foreign Relations, and its English counterpart Chatham House. Both of the latter sprang from Lord Milner's Roundtable Group that for more than 100 years have had the goal of creating a global management system dominated by the Anglo-Saxon elite that they ultimately represent. And here we have Larry Fink and David Rubenstein, both CFR and TRICOM and WEF. It is primarily these who want to take the place as trustees of a material universe for future generation. This is the Davos Manifesto from World Economic Forum. The digital world brain that emerged shows clear similarities to the form of world system that author H.G. Wells propagated in his book, The World Brain, and the cybernetic system, in which the individual is to be subordinated to the collective world organism, which philosophy professor Oliver Reiser described in his book Cosmic Humanism and World Unity. In this context, it's worth quoting a very good analysis of Wells' idea of the world brain by W. Boyd Rayward from the late 90s. In the final analysis then, it is possible to describe Wells' the world brain in this way. It is the latest and greatest expression of socio-biological evolution. It is to be the organ that will be at once shaped by and responsible for the ultimate success of that open conspiracy by means of which scientists and others will create a new world order. As a fundamental aspect of this new world order, it will provide the information necessary for the suppression of dissent and diversity. It will be under the control of an anti-individualist, anti-democratic, administrative and scholarly elite. The competent receiver and grandiosely named order of samurai. These officials will carry out their duties and sustain the repressive regimes administratively on the basis of knowledge derived from a huge database in which is integrated information about all aspects of the lives of the citizens under their care. They are to manage broader socio-biological matters relating to the immediate welfare and evolutionary development of the human race, including weeding out the unfit for detention or destruction. As I described in my book, Rockefeller Controlling the Game, and briefly summarized in the Global Coup d'etat, the entire global agenda is based on the theory that it's man-made carbon dioxide that has caused the moderate global warming of about 1 degree Celsius that has been observed since the onset of the industrial era, rather than solar cycles, geological and astronomical processes, or a natural recovery after the last ice age. The carbon dioxide theory was developed by the Swedish physicist and eugenicist Svante Arrhenius as early as 1896, but was not initially taken very seriously. It was later highlighted by the German climate scientist and meteorologist Hermann Floon, first during his service with the Nazi Luftwaffe and then after the war in collaboration with American and Swedish scientists. From the 1950s, first the Rockefeller Foundation and later the Rockefeller Brothers Fund began to get involved in the issue and finance leading climate scientists such as Roger Revelle, Swedish Carl Gustav Rossby and his doctoral student Bert Bolin. The carbon dioxide theory is also intimately connected with the warnings that the world's population growth will lead to a Malthusian catastrophe of famine and resource scarcity, if not curbed by heavy-handed population control. This despite the fact that the doomsday statements have repeatedly been disproved. The models on which everything is hinged also seem to have the same scientific reliability as divination in entrails or coffee grounds. The recognized Swedish climate scientist Lennart Bengtsson points out that we have received increasingly advanced climate models, but despite this, the uncertainty is as great as before or even greater. However, the threatening images these produced have served a greater and more infernal purpose. Since the goal of the Rockefeller family and their allies in the international financial elite from the very beginning was to create interdependence and central control of the planet, oceanography, meteorology, and global health were considered suitable areas to start from, as they did not stop at national borders. This was used to bring about international agreements that could benefit international exchange as well as scientific development in these areas. They have thus contributed to making climate change the key issue of our time. The multi-billionaires' long-term work over many decades to develop what they call sustainable development finally led to what are now beginning to turn out to be the two most decisive events in human history. The adoption of Agenda 2030 during the UN summit in September 2015, and the signing of the Paris Agreement during the UN climate meeting in Paris in December 2015, which meant the goal of keeping global warming below 2 degrees, but preferably below 1.5 degrees. Now, with only the UN Summit for the Future in September 2024 left, with WHO's updated international health regulation as a weapon, the global digital totalitarian technocracy becomes a fact. However, we still have a small window of time to counter this agenda by spreading awareness of its openly declared plans and ceasing to cooperate with all its little parts and steps. This perfect system that they want to create for us, and is supposed to help us make the right decisions from the cradle to the grave, and that can shut down society at the push of a button, has weaknesses. However well planned it may seem, it can never beat the natural intelligence that binds us together. The artificial intelligence is not an actual consciousness that can imitate our human characteristics. It has no ability to understand, feel, or give love. It instead represents an empty machine-like, cold and mechanistic view of man and life, where we are just blank sheets that can be reshaped according to the will of the demagogues. We must not allow ourselves to be duped and tricked into signing a social contract where we surrender power to a soulless machine intelligence in exchange for personal security. We should not be tempted to choose the path towards the totalitarian digital dystopia in order to save the planet. The wealthy elites who have pushed this agenda have in an insidious way tried to control the truth by taking over and controlling the production of knowledge. But the truth is not something that can be built on lies. Truth is absolute and is the real sovereign. You cannot own the science. Science is a method for finding the truth, not a worldview in itself. It is not possible to hide behind layers of lies in the long run, no matter how much money, power, and influence one possesses. This especially applies to all those who by sophisticated means have made the lie to the religion of our time. The time has now come for this fraudulent game to be exposed. There are no longer any chess moves left that can save their situation. Each move that is made instead wakens up more and more people who start to see and ask questions. It is now that we must make the choice to be freed by the truth or shackled by the lie. It is my belief and conviction that a force is brought to life within us when we as a species are threatened, that brings us together with all the people we need to overthrow the forces that ultimately threaten us. It's like a law of nature. No human or machine intelligence can ultimately defeat the natural intelligence or life force and set itself above the truth. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Jakob.